This may not be the image that comes to mind when you think of the Colorado River, but recently I visited the headwaters of the river that is so mighty it carved the Grand Canyon and provides the power that comes out of the Hoover Dam. But at this point, near Granby, Colorado, I could have waded across it. I went to Granby to visit one of my oldest friends. That is, oldest in terms of years we've known each other. We went to grade school together, and then he was my editor on the college newspaper. But it wasn't until I got to Granby that I realized that it is the headwaters of the Colorado River. Marty and I have known each other since elementary school. Then he was my editor on the college newspaper, and over the years he has hired me to freelance for him at various newspapers and magazines where he worked. Since he retired to Granby, I'd been wanting to visit him and his wife on their beautiful piece of property there on the western doorstep of Rocky Mountain National Park. Finding that his property touched the beginnings of the Colorado River was a lucky bonus. I realized I had seen so many of the other incarnations of the Colorado River, including its endpoint at the Sea of Cortez. I was excited to finally see its starting point. I like it when something I have learned or a place I have visited in one part of my travels connects with another part. In Scotland, for instance, I was surprised to see a mention of the Nez Perce tribe because I've been to several sites connected with that tribe and their battles with the U.S. cavalry. In Yellowstone National Park, there are the Gibbon River and Gibbon Falls, named for the same John Gibbon mentioned on this plaque in Scotland. Yellowstone takes very little notice of the Nez Perce, one of the indigenous tribes Gibbon and his troops chased out of the area. Likewise, I was fascinated to learn of the connection between Signal Mountain in Grand Teton National Park and Alexander Hamilton. The signal fire lit on that mountain, which gave it its name, was to recall the search parties who were out looking for Robert Ray Hamilton, the great-grandson of the first Secretary of the Treasury and the subject of the popular musical. I will talk more about those connections and others in future episodes. If Granby, Colorado is known at all, it is as the home of the Killdozer, where a rampaging man on an armored bulldozer tried to obliterate the town. The incident happened in 2004, and the town still bears the scars, and it's still talked about there. Google it if you're not familiar with this bizarre story. It is not what this episode is about, but it's still worth reading about or watching some of the videos on YouTube about it. From these small headwaters on the western slope of the Colorado Rockies, where it's so small and shallow I could have waded it, if it had not been freezing that time of year, the Colorado River winds its way 1,400 miles to where it spreads out into a trickle before it enters the Sea of Cortez, also known as the Gulf of California, in northern Mexico. Along the way, the Colorado passes through several dams and, of course, the Grand Canyon, which the river carved over millions and millions of years. I have seen the canyon a few times from both rims, and although I've taken many photos of it, it is so much more spectacular in person than any photos or videos can possibly convey. Its grandeur is just too much. It was on my drive from Pennsylvania to California that I first visited the canyon, and then I made it a point to stop at the Hoover Dam and take the tour. It was fascinating. The Grand Canyon is 5 to 6 million years old, although there's some geological evidence that parts may be 70 million years old. Its average depth is about a mile, but parts are more than 6,000 feet deep. But there's so much more to say about the Hoover Dam and Grand Canyon, they will each be the subject of their own future episodes of Walt's Wanderings. But this episode will follow and explore the rest of the Great River. From its humble beginnings near Granby, the Colorado here is so small that fly fishermen regularly do wade this part of the river, while it's still actually just a stream. And in not much distance, the river grows appreciably in size and is soon home to lots of waterfowl. My friend who lives there often sees moose, which are semi-aquatic, and other animals making use of the stream. These are moose I saw in Grand Teton National Park. I wasn't lucky enough to see any here in Granby. When my friend and I took a little walk up the hill, we did see fresh wolf tracks, although he said he has yet to see a wolf since they have been reintroduced to Colorado. I made sure I got my foot in this photo to give scale to that large paw print. It was a brisk, beautiful day to explore the area around Granby with my friend and his dog. This is my friend Marty, and that's his dog Finn, and to see this part of Colorado, which I had never experienced before. The area is sparsely populated, and it gives a small sense of what the Colorado River might have looked like to the indigenous people and the earliest settlers. There are a few homes, most of which are only used seasonally, and they're widely spaced, so there's no sense of crowding. It was good to catch up with my friend, especially in such a beautiful place. On previous trips to this part of the country, I had seen other parts of the Colorado River, including Lake Powell and Glen Canyon. Beyond that, I had visited other pieces of the Colorado Colorado River, including where it passes through the Grand Canyon, and then it's held up again by Hoover Dam. Environmentalists may argue about the wisdom of such dams, but it's hard to dispute the incredible engineering marvel of building what was then the largest dam in the world with so little infrastructure to support the thousands of workers who were willing to risk their lives in the middle of the desert to have well-paying jobs during the Great Depression. But more on that in a future episode. The water impounded by Hoover Dam in Lake Mead allows for agriculture to flourish in Southern California in spite of the scant rainfall, and allows the city of Las Vegas to exist at all in a desert. Those fountains and green lawns come from water that has traveled a long way. The water from the Colorado is diverted to feed farmland in Imperial and San Diego counties in California. It is fertile land, but lacks enough rainfall to grow crops without the help of water brought in by aqueducts and irrigation canals. California grows half the fruits and vegetables consumed in the United States, and most of that produce is grown with water that's traveled a long way either to Southern California or the vast Central Valley. This is a photo of the Imperial Valley in an area that's not irrigated to give an idea of what the natural state would be. It's rather arid. The once mighty Colorado hits the Arizona-California border near Yuma. So much of the water has been kept behind the Hoover Dam in Lake Mead that now the river is once again so small it could almost be forded. It winds through dry lands, providing a little greenery in its river valley. It has traveled a long way and still has miles to go before it reaches its end at the Gulf of California, which separates mainland Mexico from the Baja Peninsula. Not far from Yuma, what is left of the Colorado becomes an alluvial plain as the water fans out into mudflats. Some friends and I used to go to Baja California, in Mexico, quite often. I knew some sea turtle scientists in the village of Bahia de Los Angeles, and I would go down to help them care for the turtles, cleaning their tanks, and with other little projects. That's me, quite a few years ago, posing with one of the turtles. And that's me, second from the right, with a pilot and my friends on our air adventure to Baja. Back then, there were no drones to be able to easily see things from above, and there were only simple topographical maps of the region. On these maps, we had seen what looked to be an interesting bay, and we had tried to reach it a few times from the land, but we couldn't. Finally, we asked a pilot we knew to fly us over it so we could scout possible approaches to be able to drive in. On the flight down, we flew over the end of the Colorado River where it trickles into the Sea of Cortez. We were able to see where the mighty river ended. I will talk more about that flying adventure, and I will cover the Sea of Cortez and my many visits, mostly by land, to Baja California in future installments of Walt's Wandering. But next time, I will continue with the flying theme, but a very different one. I'll be talking about my father's time in the 14th Air Force, the Flying Tigers, during World War II. Subscribe so you don't miss any of the action.